Okay, cool. Hey, folks, thanks for joining in. Uh, this is Pranay, and we have with us Sudeep, who
Hi guys.
works in the design uh, part of SigNoz. So, so yeah, I think the primary idea for this was many times today people see that how something like you, it's easy to find what is the how codes are being built in open source, but it's very difficult to find examples of where how product design decisions are made and how people actually find this doing. So that's something which we want to start addressing. That hey, if you're a young designer or young product developer, how do you understand how does the design process work? How does products get decisions get built? So in this chat, we'll just give you a behind the screen look of like how we are actually working at SigNoz. So this is a live example of a feature on which we are working on, and it is not ready yet. So take everything you hear with a pinch of salt. Things may change as we go along. But yeah, I think this would give you a good perspective on how things really work. Feel free to ask questions as we go along. In this particular example, we'll take example of a feature which we are working around. How can we better monitor messaging queues, especially Kafka with open telemetry? One of the one of the gaps we saw in the market is today people allow the products allow you to monitor your systems with Kafka primarily through metrics, but there's a lot of data which is left which can be gleaned through traces, and like how we can use traces to get more insights from Kafka ecosystem. So that's something which we have been iterating on and working on, and would love to uh, get more ideas from you guys, right? So yeah, I see lots of people are joining on the live stream on like LinkedIn and YouTube. So feel free to post any questions, suggestions. I'll let Sudeep talk a bit, and then if time permits, we'll take some questions. Uh, yeah, so over to you, Sudeep. Maybe you can just introduce the problem and then share your screen on like what we are working on, what problem uh, we are trying to solve with this, and what approach we are taking.
Yep. Thank you, Pranay. So let me share my screen.
Yeah, sure.
Let me know if you guys able to see my screen.
Yeah, I think we can see your screen.
Yeah. Cool. So I'll give you some context about what we have been doing with this feature. And first of all, like currently we are um, working on a feature that helps us to achieve the end-to-end observability of messaging queues using open telemetry. And the current scope is actually focusing on Kafka ecosystem, right? Understanding like what Kafka system, how Kafka system can be managed, and what are the other elements we can actually track or the metrics we can track to make a sense of the entire system itself. So, couple of progress already happened so far. This was actually internally we have done a few progress so far. We started with the discovery and understanding the context. Basically, this is going through the PRD and refining the scope, and also understand unpacking like what are the users, what type of users are using this feature, and the values they are getting out of the scope right now we are providing, right? And based on that, couple of information architecture we created, and also along with the wireframes to communicate to the team what we are actually uh, building till the process of wireframes, and Then from there we refined few ideas, and again understood that from the scope we need so and so more elements like onboarding and showcasing the progress, or some of the graphs that, or the constraint that when we showcase the graphs or any of the information in the screen, there can be technical constraints. So we understood that, and then created flows in Figma. So basically, this is just putting together the entire screens to communicate to the team again uh, for refining the idea. So that's so far right now uh, we have done in this feature. And yeah, so just to communicate what are the users and their JTBT in this context. And we have depicted two user types here. One is operator. Their JTBT is mostly, or jobs to be done is mostly to manage Kafka, and this persona mostly will look for the numbers, like metrics that can actually help him to understand what's happening in the entire system, and that will be through graphs and metrics in the dashboards. And there is another persona who mostly will be managing different services that affect this entire Kafka ecosystem, right? And yeah, so yeah, that is majorly on the user context. And we also have few on part of the onboarding process. We have few system actors represented here. So this is to understand when a user interacts with the product, and as a goal, if they wanted to finish one task, what are the touch points on the onboarding from their system need to be done, and also from the SigNoz, what are the touch point or interaction they will be doing. So from here, we'll actually unpack a couple of interaction happening in the interaction, and then put together in the screen. So these are the work in progress state right now. And sorry, there's my dog in the background. Excuse me for that.
Do you want to take care of him? I think it's
Yeah.
fine.
Just give me 1 second.
Sorry, guys. I see some questions here. Let me just flash them. So, Sudev, I'll just take a question. How can beginner with no prior experience uh, can explore the authority space? I think you can just check out Open Telemetry. I think that's a good. So I'll mention the link here. You can check out this project. This gives a lot of basic ideas on how does uh, this work, and then maybe you can go dive deeper. Yeah, sorry, Sudeep, you can continue. I'll take maybe questions at the end.
Yeah. So I
I
was
think
actually
so. If somebody is saying to zoom in a bit,
sure. Yeah, mostly this representation from the engineering team provides this entire flow. So my idea is actually to from this flow, I need to kind of extend some of the setup, that while user is onboarding, we will actually communicate to the user as a hook. So user will have a clear understanding, okay, how to go through these steps and in which order, so they can interact on each system as well. Yep. And a couple of more things on the user journey wise. Since we talked about the user part, there is also one other thinking process internally that we have to do to understand how's the user actually go through the entire um, funnel from the day starting, like the day zero. What are the things that we want to achieve and communicate to the user, right? And mostly this is my assumption right now, that day zero, user will be discovering this feature from the sidebar or the kind of nudges in the onboarding that we place, and from the user will understand the value that this feature in the platform can deliver, and from there they might be exploring, or we should enable the user to explore further um, uh, parts of the feature. Basically, we can provide empty states and kind of showcase a couple of examples, and also kind of learning hooks where they can learn further more. And once it start interesting for them, ideally they would like to invite their team members, so enable a hook to collaborate with the team as well. So there's a kind of starting point of PLG touch points that we adding here, and it's unlikely they kind of start with this setup on the day zero itself. So on the day one, once they learned everything and collaborated, the day one we mostly they'll be getting started with empty states where they wanted to enable the data to unpack more, enable the data, and help the team to see the dashboard um, with the elements like producers, consumers, and the Kafka system itself too. Send basically enabling the data sources to send in the data. And the day
Sudeep,
two,
Sudeep, you
yeah,
talked about hooks. Can you, like, what do you mean by hooks here?
hooks.
Uh,
Yeah, it's actually touch point where like maybe you can call it like sometimes some things will be CTAs or buttons
hmm,
where
hmm,
we give it to the user in the screen to invite. One example like invite mostly will be a CTA based hook that will help the user to invite their team members or multiple team members at once, right?
got
And a couple of hooks will be just a learning part, maybe adding a video or some of the documentation to just to help them to understand about the feature furthermore.
got it. Got it.
Yeah. And the day two, mostly we will, and assuming that this entire setup is done over here, and basically we want to actually give the aha moment in the day two itself. So at the end, all the metrics and the graphs will be shown after successfully setting up the flow. Yeah. So just to kind of unpack here more on this setup and aha. So this is actually coming from the funnel representation or the funnel view when we think about when to place the feature or how to nudge the user to use these features. Uh, right. So basically, acquisition that we focus on mostly on the sign up and the sign up till the sign up completed. User will go through this entire exercise in the starting, and on the activation part, there can be a use case from the Kafka feature that we talked about, messaging queue, and one of the use case will be enabled here, and there can be set up an aha and habit. So these are the loops that mostly user will be we want the user to go through in order to successfully engage with the product. So maybe one use case will be enabled first. Maybe a customer lag will be one use case. And there can be multiple use cases also enabled based on the scope that we learn from the customers as well, or from the product side. Yeah. So this is that representation, and we will be touching and set up an aha at the current moment. Yeah. Any thought process so far, or any questions?
Oh, I think we can go ahead, Sudeep. I think let's dive deeper into the Kafka example which you had. We have around 10, 11 minutes more.
Sure. So right now, again, this is just to just a representation with the um, elements that we already talked, stitched together in a flow. It might not be fully polished with the uh, design system elements that already in our uh, Figma setup. So right now, the left navigation, I'll start with the left navigation, and we to introduce the messaging queue Kafka setup, we actually added a uh, navigation on the left sidebar. So that will be the entry point to for the users to explore and understand the entire setup onboarding part. Right. So by default, we will showcase a couple of touch points here. So these were I was referring to the hooks, right? Couple of touch points here um, to kind of understand the entire system components. So there are three components majorly to set up in order to see this entire data. What we're showing in overview here, and a couple of other graphs also in the use case were represented here as well, right? So that's what this is highlighted and give the primary scope here. And yeah, so once they get started, basically this will lead to a setup flow where right now this is just a work in progress, but setup flow where the user will go through each steps like we showcased here and configure uh, the data source and verify. So once everything is done, the will system will verify that entire part and will be started showcasing in the dashboard itself. So this is the intermediate state where um, till the setup is done, these three sections will be or hooks will be showcased all the time. Yep. Pranay, any
Cool.
question?
Yeah, I think there's one question around. Uh, I think how do people get started with non-code contributions? So yeah, I think today we have guides where people can start with contributing with code. I think we as a project also don't have any guides on how people can get started um, with non-code contributions. Maybe we'll see how this can be enabled. But if you go to our uh, website repo, which is SigNoz.web, we have some docs, like some issues on how you can get started with start building docs for SigNoz. So let me just pull up the link for SigNoz. Yeah, so like our code, our website is also open source. So we have all our questions about, sorry, one second. So all our docs and like all our content goes there. So I've just posted the link on about our repo. So maybe you can look at that. That will have some questions around docs. And then that might be a good place to get started. Let me see if you have any other questions. Yeah, I think Kirubanandan is asking, I know Golang and Hotel, but do we need to start developing custom exporters? Yeah, so Kirubanandan, so this call is primarily focused on the design process which we follow for SigNoz. Uh, for the question which you are asking, I think SigNoz community call may be a better place where you can ask this question, because there we dive deeper into more around open telemetry and how we can do different things around SigNoz. So yeah, so we have this call uh, roughly once a month. So maybe you should check out our Slack community to see when we do that, or like even our if you follow our Twitter or our LinkedIn, you should be able to see when we follow that. Mm, yeah, let me see. I think we have one more question around how can a beginner with no prior experience understand and explore the observability space out of pure interest? So yeah, I think a good place to start with to start learning about open observability, a project which is quite active in this domain is OpenTelemetry. So OpenTelemetry um, is a project where you can get started about uh, observability, and it is a project which helps you understand how you can send telemetry data to from different type of applications and like monitor applications. So this may be the project if you want to look into, and also follow SigNoz blog and Twitter. We share a lot of stuff around telemetry and observability. Mm. I think these are the questions. Maybe Sudeep, like question to you. So when you think about designing such products, right? One of the key considerations is like these are generally very dense, like data dense dashboards, right? So how do you manage the like? What's the thought process behind managing that? It's simple to get started, but at the same time, it can show a lot of data. Are there tips or like how should people think about it? Because when I started like building products or like when we started designing, that was one of the challenges I faced. That hey, like it's easy if you have like a simple tables to show, but if you have dashboards and that they have rich interactions to other things, how do you show like more stuff in one place but also keep it simple? I think that's one design question which I usually struggle with. So do you have
Yeah.
any good frameworks to follow there or something?
So I think whenever I get a even the problem statement of PID level, right? So I try to understand the relationship between objects, and I mean that is trying to understand the system and how it behaves, right? And there is parallelly there will be another thinking process charts from the user's context, right? So when we take the, I mean, mostly this jobs to be done framework helps to unpack what is their current focus in this job, right? So if they wanted to set up a dashboard, right? So we can actually unpack a few elements that, that required that or mandatory for that jobs to be done, right? And maybe internally can have a checklist. So I create a checklist in a bullet point where kind of put like, okay, these are mandatory information for that user in order to complete this task. So you
Hmm.
present that upfront in the screen, and whatever other elements that is an optional can be go into the second layer, right? So now the second layer can be click to a model or maybe a second layer page itself, right? So we can hide in with different patterns. So once we know the relationship and the user's context, then it's easy on the interaction layer we can represent this one, right? So if we assume that okay, these are the tables that really high priority, then show that upfront. And inside that also, maybe not all the data need to be shown upfront. So we can have a pagination, or we can kind of like group things in a different way over there. I mean, these are the few thoughts I have just now. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a very important point. So understanding the user use case and what they want to see at that point of time and what is the most important for them is very critical. I think even as we are building signals and we are realizing different type of user personas are using the product, we are realizing that hey, like keeping this like the user problem at the center is like how you create the best of the design. So uh, actually, like when I started used to start design, I used to focus a lot more on like this looking pretty, like aesthetically good. Uh, but like if you think about it, fundamentally, a product is there to solve a problem, right? Like it's a user has hired you to solve a problem, right?
Right.
And aesthetics make it easy, but before that, it should have the fundamentals, like it does the job, and then it should look good.
Right.
Uh, yeah. So and like aesthetics should not sacrifice it doing the job. Like the main information which needs to be there of.
Right. And over there also you can see like the visual layer that mostly move fast, right? We can actually even like from the design team or the execution where we can actually iterate a lot. But this the core relationship between objects and kind of data that we wanted to provide to the user, that mostly need to be stabilized, and that grows really slow because engineers have to kind of build that entire setup in order to provide. So there's a lot of moving parts over there um, like while building itself. So we had to kind of make sure in the paper, or at least from PRD to the design side, we are giving lot of space, thinking space to these kind of um, elements before actually giving to the developers itself, right? Like
Yeah.
some of the example we already talked about, like user context and relationship between the system, like different actors altogether.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, I think we have to jump on another call, so we have to keep this short. Uh, but yeah, do let us know if you found this useful. What you would like to see in further such calls. So, one of the things which want to like we are looking to experiment to do is to see if giving this behind the scenes view of like how product design works or how building the thought process behind building more sort of data dense products, more complicated products, is this helpful for the community? So do share any feedback which you have, would help us understand if there's like any interest in this or not. Because we are also doing this for the first time, and just because this seemed interesting to me and Shudev, so I thought we'll just chat and like see if there's more interest from the community. So yeah, thanks for dropping by, and do leave us comments on LinkedIn, YouTube, or Twitter where you are following us. And see you next time.
Thank you.
Cool. Bye bye.